We are modest guys. We believe that there are needs, and if you really go into the core, the needs and desires are common across the world. Yeah? The difference is that the habits and attitudes are different. And what we try to do is, in many times, there are latent needs. Let me give you a very simple example. Let's take deodorants. Yeah. Now, body odor is a very natural thing. But if you were to go and ask a person who doesn't use deo, he would say that my neighbor smells offensive, but I don't. If you were to ask his neighbor, he would tell the same thing. Now, for us as a consumer goods company, it is very important that to make a person realize that yes, it's a natural phenomenon, but you don't have to worry, there is a Rexona for you, yeah, or an Axe for you, which will take care of your deodorant. That's what we do. Yeah. So there are needs, we identify them. Very important as marketeers to identify unmet needs. And once we have identified the unmet needs, we go out and try to meet those needs.
Maybe what I'll do is I will engage more with the audience and start some questions so that even halfway through the...
Yeah.
Now guys, we're getting into the zone of drilling deeper into understanding Unilever. A lot of people here are part of the SME sector. Any early thoughts, early questions that you may have for Sanjiv? Just want to start engaging the audience and start interacting. Anything? Nothing? You're just enjoying yourself, totally bored, fallen asleep, or one of the, none of the above?
Yeah, yes. Mr. Mehta, thank you for your insight. Just a curiosity, because Bhopal has been considered as a tragedy, as opposed to an accident or incident that has happened.
Yeah.
Has enough been done for the people or who have been affected?
Now, if going into the precise answer is the Union of India had stepped into the shoes of the victims, yeah, and there was an act called Bhopal Gas Leak Disaster Processing of Claims Act, under which the rights of the victims were taken over by the Union of India. Now, this was not a contractual liability, but what is called as a liability which comes under the law of torts. And under, there was an out-of-court settlement. And under that settlement, Union Carbide had paid to Union of India $470 million in 1988-89. Yeah? Now, which were meant to go to the victims. I believe a lot of money has gone to the victims, not entirely, because a lot of effort has gone in to rehabilitating them, to paying them. But I would not be having a complete account of how the Union of India has dispersed them out.
Let's stay with the Unilever segment on the business side. We'll have opportunities.
There is a question for the lady over there. Yes, please.
Yes, Mahim.
Hi, Mr. Mehta. You mentioned that 250,000 people. Oh, thank you very much. You mentioned that 250,000 households, their livelihoods depend on Unilever over here. What is Unilever's approach towards locally produced or local factories? I understand you have a lot of that.
Yeah, sure. We have 9 factories dotting the landscape in the MENA region. Yeah, starting with from the west. If I start, it is Casablanca, it is Tunis, it is Oran, it is Alexandria, it is Cairo, it is Jeddah, it is Dubai. And you will be very happy to know that 85% by value terms of the products that we sell in the region are manufactured within the region. Yeah? So we certainly believe, that's the reason we say we are multi-local, multinational. Yeah? Because we believe in, very importantly, is tying ourselves with the ethos of the local people. And we can't be just importing products and sending it here. And of course it makes economic sense.
Cost of distribution, local produce, and all of those good things.
Yes, please.
Mr. Mehta, I wanted to know, if you could guide us in terms of, building a brand. Like if you're starting up a business and it's a consumer-oriented business and you want to build a brand, so what are the fundamentals? What tips would you give to a new business when it comes to starting a brand?
Certainly. If I just take a step back and if I pause on what strategy is all about, when you craft a strategy, is at the root you would be asking yourself, what is the consumer need that I want to meet? So you've identified the consumer need or a landscape where you can play a game. Yeah? Then you say, wonderful, how do I create value for the consumer? And the value for the consumer could be functional attributes or it could be emotional benefits. Yeah? Once you have decided that, then you would ask yourself, how do I create value for myself? Yeah? Because you can have an enduring business when you create value for the consumer and create value for yourself. So you need to understand the value chain. And while talking about how do you create value for yourself, the question would be, what kind of capabilities I need to create value? Yeah? And while you're doing this, you're going to make some hard choices. Strategy boils down to making choices. Yeah? So once you have decided, now it comes to branding. What does branding do at the core? Branding is about telling the consumers that what I provide you will be a consistent product. Let me take a very simple example. Tea, let's take Lipton tea. We source our tea from Kenya, from Assam, from Sri Lanka, and from hundreds of gardens. But the end cup that you get is absolutely similar whenever you buy, wherever you buy. Yeah? So the end cup is similar, and where does that promise come from? That promise comes from yellow label Lipton. That's what a brand stands for. It's a promise. It's a promise that I tell the consumers, hey guys, believe in me, trust in me, I will give you what I promise. Then it comes to about building a brand. While building a brand, remember something, you have to be very consistent in what you promise, from functional attributes and from emotional attributes. The brand becomes really strong when you transcend functional attributes and you start occupying the emotional space in the minds of consumers. Yeah? That is when it really becomes a brand. And then you need to communicate it. And communicate it in a manner which will resonate with the consumers. Yeah? For example, if I'm communicating Lipton, I will do it in a very different way. But if I'm communicating Axe, which is all about seduction, it will be done in a very different way. Yeah? So you need to understand your brand, create a brand, and then there are brand signatures. Brand signature from a consumer lens could be anything, from attributes, to color, to packaging, to design. They will then be able to associate that brand with those associations. Yeah.
What are your innovation processes? Because you obviously create many, many new brands as they come along. How does one start that process with you?
Sure.
Is it in a lab? Is somebody coming in with a product? How do you do that?
We do extensive consumer research. We not only do extensive consumer research, I and my team, we spend huge amount of time with the consumers. We go to consumer homes pretty regularly. Yeah? Quite a few days we spend just visiting consumers. We go to the trade. We understand the shoppers. Yeah? Spend time with them doing shopping to understand how they make their decision. So we have huge amount of research. Then we also do formal research. We believe in many countries, we do more research about consumers than even the economic department of the government. Yeah, that's the amount of level of research we do. And that is all to understand, again, the needs, the habits, the attitudes of consumers. Once we have done that, and we understand that this is a category where we want to operate in, then we would look at how do we meet those needs. Yeah? So we would first be developing clearly a prototype, yeah, which would be tested extensively. Once the prototype is tested, then we would be looking at from a perspective of the value chain, yeah, where does it fit in, how do we create, how do we manufacture, is what segment of the market do we cater to. So we have a complete funnel from ideas to rollout. It goes through various what we call as the gates, and at different stage, different people, yeah, sit as gatekeepers to look at, is it based on strategy? Yeah? Is it based on an innovation plan? Again, going back to the basics, are we creating value for the consumer? Are we creating value for ourselves? What capabilities we need? What is the route to market we'll adopt? What is the channel we will be adopting? And that's when we roll it out. So it is a very clear process-driven the way we work. But in this process, what we try to instill is a huge amount of creativity. Yeah, is one of the things which we do in our business. You know, not all our products succeed. We have to accept it. We will be very happy if 7 out of 10 succeed. Yeah, there will be products which will bomb. Now you have to accept failure. You can't be in a situation where you penalize failure, because then you won't be taking risk. Remember, as all entrepreneurs here, risk and reward go together. So you have to take risk. Yeah? And that's what we try to instill in our people, the risk taking. Yeah? And we also make people understand that failure is not the opposite of success. It's often wrong, we think that failure is the opposite of success, so long as we learn from failures. Yeah. So yes, innovation for a consumer goods business is a lifeblood, very clearly.
What sort of people are you looking for? What sort of people do you hire? Because you're an employer of choice.
Yeah.
It's actually very easy for you.
We recruit the best and make them better.
So how many people here would like to join Unilever? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What should these, well actually more than that, what should these people be looking for in terms of projecting themselves to become a Unilever employee?
Yeah, you know, when we look at an employee, when we go about to graduate schools to recruit people, is clearly we look at basic intelligence, good solid intelligence, yeah, good GPS scores, well-rounded personality. We're not necessarily looking at Einstein. Yeah, at the end of the day, we sell soaps and soups. Yeah, we are not making cryogenic containers. So we look at good intelligence. We look at passion. That's very important for us. Yeah. Do you have passion for consumers? Yeah. Do you have passion to win? So that is another element that we certainly look at. The other bit which we look at is how good a team player are you? Yeah. Are you someone who would enjoy working for others? Are you someone who would have leadership abilities to lead others? Yeah? So that's again one aspect we really drill down into understanding that is he a loner? Would he be very happy being led? Would he be very happy leading teams? Now those are clearly some of the things we look at. Then of course there are specialities. If we are looking at R&D scientists, then of course we will look at his domain skills. Yeah? Is he a good physicist? Is he a good chemist? Is he a good biologist? Now those are the kind of things we look at when we are recruiting people for specialist functions. But I was talking more about the management trainee, the general management cadre, the marketing and sales. Now those are the things we look at a person. Yeah. And what we do, of course, is invest in building our employer brand. Yeah. There are many countries in the D&D world where we are the employer of choice. In this region, for instance, we have a huge pool of talent in Egypt, 90 million, largest country. Yeah? in 90 million people, good educational institutions. It's a very ancient civilization. And in Egypt, we are the employer of choice, #1 brand. So we are able to attract the best possible talent. That's what we do. Again, like any brand, we remain true to our promise that we are not amongst the companies like Goldman Sachs who would pay you millions of dollars when you join, but we would give you a great, exciting career. We would give you a good workplace. We would invest in you. We would develop you. Yeah. We would treat you with respect. And I've been now working for Unilever for 21 years. I've been heading businesses for the last 12 years. But there has been not a single night where when I go to sleep, I'm worried because I have been asked or I have done something which is wrong or illegal. Never ever. Our business would never tell us to do. Yeah? Whether it is about paying taxes or fixing your books or cooking your books.
So you don't do what Apple does?
Apple!
Now,
Now again, you know, there are a lot of, I'm sure there are financial people here. Is the jury is out clearly. Is it about evasion or avoidance?
it's about avoidance.
And I think, as far as I see it from a distance, is they have done a great job of tax planning. Plain and simple. Now, if John McCain bitches about it, now that's his job as legislator to fix his law. He can't be telling Apple that, hey guys, even if you're not entitled to pay tax, you come and pay tax. That's ridiculous. So I would not really hold Apple guilty at this stage.
May I just go back to the question of innovation, because it resonates a lot. Yesterday we were at this very interesting discussion with Malcolm Gladwell, who's a very famous writer and author. And he came up with 3 specific things for an innovative culture. The first one is to have urgency. The second one is to be disagreeable and just don't care, just focus on your job. And the third one was to have constraints and scarcity in life. Otherwise, you just don't innovate. Now, people on this side can relate to that. Unilever has none of those. No urgency, no constraints, and you're not allowed to be disagreeable at Unilever, you'll get thrown out. How do you create a culture?
You know, while we might be a big company, a $65 billion business, we try to inculcate the soul of a small company. Yeah, that's how we run the business. Now, when you talk about urgency, our industry is called as fast-moving consumer goods. So I would ask you to underline the word fast. Yeah, is if you aren't fast in this business, you're a dead duck. Yeah? You might be a market leader, but your market leadership could be usurped the next year if you don't innovate and renovate your brands. As simple as that. Yeah? A new technology might come in, a new product might come in. Yeah? Suddenly, you know, Mr. Qureshi might have a product where he can grow his hair. Yeah? And under those circumstances, the ball game shifts completely. So yes, we have to be fast, absolutely fast, no question about that. But he was looking at, Malcolm was looking at it from the lens of essentially Silicon Valley companies, yeah? The technology companies. If you look at the history of P&G, 170 years of existence. Yeah? Look at the history of Unilever, is 140 years of existence. Yeah? And if you look at it from his lens, that only when you're constrained will you have innovation. It's not a gospel. It's not a gospel. You can clearly have innovation processes running in the business where you have highly motivated employees churning out innovations at rapid fire speed. Yeah? And there need not necessarily be that you throttle them, you don't give them funds, ask them to stay in a shack, and only then they will come out with the innovation. Not necessary. He was looking at it only from a Silicon Valley lens, and at that lens, I would agree with him, but I won't agree with him on that you necessarily need to have everywhere. Certainly not. Certainly not.
Let's talk about community. You do a lot of work for the community, you do a lot of work in the community. And one interesting thing that you spoke about was one of your new strategies to actually train people how to be grocers, to train people how to actually trade on a day-to-day basis. How does that work?
Yeah. I'll just step back and talk about capitalism first. Yeah. I'm a die-hard capitalist, and I have in a way switched because earlier in my youth we were growing up in socialist India, and all of us were influenced by Karl Marx. And I used to believe that in your 20s, if you are not a socialist, you don't have a heart. Yeah. And later on, one realized in my 30s that if I'm not a capitalist, I don't have a head. And capitalism is very clearly the best way to allocate scarce resources. Yeah? It's the best way, clearly true. After the Warsaw Pact countries, they folded up, it became even more clear that capitalism is the way. And if you look at it in the last couple of decades, the number of people who have been lifted out of poverty trap have been immense. Yeah? And the amount of wealth that has been created in the world has been immense. But is capitalism a cure for all ills? Certainly not. If you look around the world today, about 1/3 of the people still are below the poverty trap. Yeah? Is less than $2 a day. If you look at it from another lens, 1 billion people go to bed hungry every night. Yeah. Is every 6 seconds, a child dies of malnutrition. And if you were to look at the global financial crisis, in many ways, it was a crisis of ethics. It was a crisis of moral. And that is the reason why it is very important for us to reinvent capitalism. Not the capitalism that we know, but in a very different way. And one of our endeavor as Unilever has been, we have what we call as the sustainable living plan. For a business to endure, it has to grow. It has to grow in a consistent manner. It has to grow competitively, yeah, because you can't be losing market shares. You have to be profitable, otherwise you will not be able to survive. But very importantly, your growth has to be responsible. And by responsible we mean, we have to decouple the growth with our adverse imprint. Here I'm coming to climate change, another subject which I'm very passionate about. If you look at today, we are consuming resources at 1.5 times our planet's capacity to replenish. Yeah, this is on an average basis. If we were to look at the way US has been consuming, it is at thrice the rate of the planet's ability to replenish. The way the number of people are being lifted out of the poverty trap and the rebalancing that is taking place in the world, yeah, from west to east and from north to south, our food production would have to go up by 70% by 2050. 70%. Yeah? And we are locked into a climate temperature rise. There's no getting away from it. Under those circumstances, Unilever has said we will decouple our growth from our environment footprints. So we have been audacious enough to tell the public, yeah, importantly, take on a goal that while we double our business, we will halve our environment footprint. The other thing we are talking about, that we will impact the health and hygiene of 1 billion people by 2020. Yeah. Now, you would be very surprised that there are many people in developing world, they die of diarrhea, which could have been prevented had they followed simple hygiene practices like washing your hands. Yeah, after toilet, before eating food, but people don't do that. So these are very simple habits. If you were, you would be very surprised with number of people who do not brush their teeth, yeah, and the illnesses which are associated with bad gums and bad teeth. Now again, a business like ours has a role to play over here. And third important bit, we are a big consumers of raw material. Yeah? About 8% of the global vegetable oil is consumed by Unilever. Yeah? Is about 15% of the global tea crop is consumed by Unilever. So what we have said that by 2020, 100% of our raw material will be sourced from sustainable sources. And one of the things I would like to promise you, that by 2015, every Lipton yellow label tea bag that you consume, the tea in it would have been sourced from sustainable sources as certified by Rainforest Alliance. Yeah? So that's a very clear global agenda. And coming to what he was talking about in terms of retailers, we today in this region operate in what I would call as predominantly a general trade environment. General trade as opposed to modern trade. Yeah? General trade is the mom and pop stores, the grocery stores, the bakala stores. We have 1 million outlets, out of which it would be about 975,000 plus would be bakalas, groceries. Now groceries, they are finding it increasingly difficult to stand up to competition which comes from Carrefour, from Lulu's of the world. And what we have taken on ourselves, that we will help the grocers improve their business so that they can survive and thrive in an environment which is changing. And we know the art of retailing. We know the science of retailing. So we have packaged together a learning program, yeah, very much like what Emirates NBD has been doing for small SMEs, of how do we train grocers into retailing. And interestingly, the Ministry